Are you afraid of seeing this? Zero battery and so many warnings? Is this your worst nightmare? Is this what's keeping you from buying an EV? Has range anxiety made you nervous about taking road trips? When I purchased my EV 2 years ago, I was driving with range anxiety. And oh, by the way, that tow truck, that wasn't me. The zero battery, that was me, and I planned it. Stay with me, and I'll tell you how and why. When I purchased my EV 2 years ago, I tried to be prepared for my first big road trip from California to Washington State. And I found out quickly there were some challenges that I had not anticipated. I have learned so much in the last couple of years, and I can tell you that things are so much better today than they were just 2 years ago. In this video, I'm going to show you the techniques that I use when planning a road trip. If you already own an EV and have taken road trips, I hope you'll share your insights and techniques that you use in the comments below. If you are a new owner or you're considering buying an EV, I'm going to share some things that you really should know before hitting the road. So stay to the end of the video and I'll show you the special tool that I use to end range anxiety. Welcome to my channel, Life After 70. For me, planning a road trip starts at my desk, and it's all part of the fun. I do love preparing for road trips, and I love getting all my ducks in a row before heading out. Having a plan and knowing what to expect, and also planning for the unexpected, makes traveling much more relaxing. And I don't know about you, but at age 77, I am less of a risk taker, and I know that uncertainty just fuels my fears. So I make sure that I'm mentally prepared and ready when I head out on the road. So let's start out with some of the basics. These are the maps that I use on my mobile phone, my tablet, my desktop for trip planning. I use Apple Maps, I use Google Maps, I use Waze. There's a lot of choices out there. But using these three choices, it gives me, some have better features than others. Everybody has a favorite. Whatever works for you is a good one to use. When I sit down, I'll map out my whole route from the very start of my trip all the way to the end of my trip. And in between, I'll map out each charging stop along the way. So before I leave, I already know where I'm going to be stopping at and what station I'm going to be stopping at. And personally, I like to stick to a brand when I'm charging. Because I have free charging with Electrify America with my Lucid, that's what I search for in my charging stops. But there's, great stations out there in all different brands, and you need to find the one that works for you, that you are comfortable with. And you'll get to know their chargers, and that also will make the trip easier for you, knowing what to expect when you get there. You may be wondering why I don't use the mapping system built into my car. And the reason I don't use it for pre-planning is because I don't like sitting in the car and poking at the screen. I'd rather sit at my desk or be on my tablet or my laptop and planning out my stops on a screen that's easier for me to navigate with. I also don't think it's great for mapping stops accurately, or at least not the distances that I'm okay with. It tends to be more conservative than I would feel like I need to be at this stage. I like to extend my trips out further between stops and not stop as often as is what my Lucid would recommend that I stop at. So I'd rather make those choices myself instead of letting the car make the choices for me. But if you have a great mapping system in your car and you're comfortable with it, then go for it. That's what you should use. So here's what I do when I'm using my car mapping system, and I do use it, but I only use it once I'm on the road, and I use it always for only my next charging stop. I don't use it for my complete plan from start to finish. So my in-car nav system will tell me the distance to my next charging stop, what it expects that I'll have as a reserve when I get to that charging stop. And I use that as some guidance, but I don't trust it enough to have it be my only source of information. That's why I use another tool that really helps me. So before I leave on the trip, I have already planned out every charging stop for the trip. And I have that, usually I'll have it in Apple Maps because I like using Apple Maps. And so I'll be able to pull that up on my phone or pull it up on CarPlay, and I'll be able to see it on screen, my total route. And then again, what I'll do is I'll just use my in-car routing system that Lucid provides to route me to that next charging stop. The other tools that I use are designed for EVs, route planning. And one of the real popular ones is called a Better Route Planner. ABRP is the name that a lot of people refer to it, ABRP. And they have a free version, they have a paid version. And it will do automatic calculations for you, but it does require some setup time, and it's rather complex with a lot of buried menu options. And I just don't feel that I have, maybe it's the time or the effort that it takes to use that. It's not something you can use on the fly, and so it is a tool that I use, but I don't necessarily rely on that. It's not one of my go-to options. My go-to option is an app that I developed, and that app is called EVRC. And I developed it because I knew what I wanted, and I wanted to have it available for the kind of use that I was looking for, and it didn't exist. There wasn't another app out there that did it. I basically was using a spreadsheet at the time, and I don't really like using paper, so I thought, well, there should be an app to do what I'm doing with this spreadsheet. So that's kind of how it happened. So I took the time to develop the app for the Apple iOS system. I don't have it for, at this point, I don't have it for Android. I may make it available in the future. I do have a lot of the coding done for it. I just haven't finished it. I don't make money on that app. I developed it for myself, but I decided to make it free for anybody that wanted to have it. So I put it up on the Apple Store, and I'll leave a link in the description on where you can get that app for free. And also I'll leave a link where you can get the spreadsheet that I was using prior to the app. So you can download that and then modify it with the battery size in your car. Make sure it's the usable battery size, not just the total battery size. So you need to find out what your usable is. Usually about 6 kilowatt hours, 5 or 6 kilowatt hours less than what their specification is. So if they say it's a 100 kilowatt hour battery, then you're probably going to have a usable around 95 kilowatt hours. So you want to make sure that you get that number right, because that's what's really important. That's really all the car has access to, is that usable kilowatt hours. So it's really important you get that amount plugged into the spreadsheet or into my app, either one. They need that data in order to do the proper calculations. So the other thing to think about is EV charging stations and how you're going to pay for your charging session, because unlike gas stations, none of them accept cash. You can't use cash. All you can use is a debit card or a credit card. And your options there are to swipe the card or tap the card if they have it available on the dispenser. And I can tell you some companies do. Electrify America does. Tesla does not. I believe EVgo and ChargePoint do. But the other option for that is, and it's a good option to have as a backup anyway, is to have that company's app on your telephone, on your mobile phone, so that you can pay directly out of that app in case there's a problem with the credit card machine at the dispenser. And that's not uncommon. So as a backup, I definitely would have that app on your phone, for me, Electrify America, and have that available in case you need it. The other thing to think about is stations that you can use and ones that you can't. What kind of plug does your car have? All of the Teslas have what's now becoming the new standard, which is the NACS connector. The NACS connector is going to be on all new cars coming out here in the next year or two. The rest of the cars, non-Teslas, have CCS1 connectors. And the CCS1 connector is obviously different than the Tesla. So when you go to a station, you need to go to a station that has the proper plug for your car. If you have a adapter for taking it from a CCS1 over to a NACS, so you can put that adapter on the end of your cable and then plug it into your car, and that your car has been approved for Tesla use, then you can use Tesla stations. But you have to make sure that first off, your car is approved by Tesla to charge at their stations. Ford's, General Motors, I believe Kia, and others are now approved. Lucid's going to be approved second quarter of this year, so I'll be able to take my Lucid to a Tesla charging station, but only if I have the adapter plug, which I'll purchase, so I can put that onto the end of the cable at the Tesla charging station and plug it into my car. So you need to have that adapter. Now there are some charging stations, Tesla charging stations, that have what's called the Magic Dock. And the Magic Dock has a built-in adapter for both CCS1 and NACS built right into the cable. When you pull the cable off, it'll come out with the cable so you can plug it directly into your car. But the research that I've done on that, those are very far and few between. So to take advantage of the Tesla network, you definitely want to get yourself an adapter if you have a CCS1 car, if you're non-Tesla. All those other stations, Electrify America, EVgo, ChargePoint, virtually all of them have CCS1 connectors. So Tesla people that want to use those stations, the non-Tesla stations, can do so if they have an adapter that converts from the CCS1 to the NACS adapter or NACS plug. So if they can have that with them, then they can also use those stations. The important thing of all this is just knowing what stations support your car. And I'm going to map my route on my desktop computer and find those charging stations that I know work with my car along the way. For me, again, it's going to be Electrify America, and mainly because it's free for the first 3 years when I purchased the car. Great deal. So when I got my Lucid 2 years ago and I made my first 1,300-mile trip, I was driving in fear and having range anxiety. Now that I know my car, I no longer have that fear. I was making stops that weren't needed on that first trip, and I was even driving off my intended route to charge at stations that I now know just weren't even necessary for me to stop at. But back then, I was nervous about running out of battery. And you probably have that same thing if you're new to taking road trips in an EV. It's all about getting to know your car. And the more you know about your car, you know what its limitations are, the less anxiety you're going to have on those trips. So when planning out my trip, I run my remaining battery down to 5%. And I don't worry about it if doing that. I know I've got the math is all done, so I know I'm going to get there. And if I get there with 5%, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as I don't run out. Most of my stops, I'm going to plan to charge or run it down to 10 to 20% remaining. And then I'll just charge to 80% I'll go from 10 to 80, 20 to 80, whatever. I don't go above 80 unless I have to, because it takes forever. Once you get to 80%, it slows way down and you're going to be spending a lot of time at the charging station. So don't go above 80% unless you really need to. I do that because I trust my planning, that I know what I need to do or how much charge I need when I left. And I know what I need to do if I need to extend my range. I know how to do that if I start to worry. All of the new EVs, they're all computers on wheels and they're built around incredible technology. All of the gas cars I've ever owned over the years never came close to providing the kind of information EVs give. EVs give you precise data to track your battery usage. So with proper planning, there really is no reason to ever run out of battery power in your car. What I do on the road is a little different, and I'll try to explain it to you the best I can here. But if I'm on the road and I'm getting a little bit uncomfortable and maybe a little bit of range anxiety is creeping in, I'm starting to worry whether I'm going to make it to the destination. There's some things I do. First off, there's 3 things I do before I leave on the first leg of the trip. I determine the distance to my first charging stop, and I use the calculator that I developed, or you can use the spreadsheet, and using the efficiency I expect to calculate how much charge I need, and I want to make sure that it's high enough to leave me a reserve in my comfort zone, and my comfort zone is above 5%. I also use that calculator. This is the third thing I do, and to me this is really important, is I use that calculator to show me the very minimum efficiency to get there. This would be the number that I absolutely need to have. If I'm under that number, I will need to be prepared to take action by either finding a charging station or increasing my efficiency. And there are ways you can increase efficiency. The most important way is just slowing down. High speed is a killer of efficiency in an EV. So the faster you go, mine above 70 miles an hour, and the efficiency just goes way down. So if I'm worried, I'll just slow down to 65 or whatever I need to in order to get there. If you're new to driving an EV, what's really important is to understand efficiency and how it relates to your battery usage. It's much the same as gas mileage and miles per gallon. In an EV, the difference is you're measuring the rate of drain on the battery for the miles traveled. So it's a measurement of how far on each kilowatt of battery storage, kilowatt hour, of battery storage will take you. The calculator or spreadsheet really helps you understand that relationship. So it's a good idea, just even if you don't use the calculator or you don't use a spreadsheet, if you just understand what it is, the relationship on that spreadsheet, it's going to really help you understand your car better. So the secret tool that I use on my road trips, here's an example of why I use it. In the graphic shown here, I have my first stop at a charging station that is 129 miles, and I'm leaving with my current battery charge at 60%. As you can see, my Lucid Trip computer shows that I should have 61 miles in reserve when I arrive. Well, this is where things go wrong. First, as you can see in the screen, in this screen that I'm showing you here, I'll be gaining over 2,000 feet of elevation from my starting point to my charging stop. And my Lucid is calculating that I'll get an efficiency of 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour. Well, I know that's not correct, at least not the way I drive and the hill I need to climb. What I want to know is what is the worst case or the poorest efficiency that will get me there. And this is kind of the key thing I was talking about, that I do this a little bit different. I'm going to calculate worst case scenario. And you can see on the screen here that as I move that slider, 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour will leave me just 2% of the battery, with about 4 miles of reserve when I get to the charging station. So I know that if I'm going to leave with a 60% battery, I'll need an efficiency of at least 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour in order to reach my destination. Now, without my app, I can look at the spreadsheet and you'll see, or you can take a look up here on the spreadsheet and you'll see the same conclusion, that the percentage of charge on the left, and you'll find the 60% on the left, and you can look at the column 2.7 and you'll see that would give you a range where that intersects. That would give you a range of 129 miles. So basically the same thing. And about that app, I developed it for personal use, and I'm sharing it, and I think it's a great tool if you want to use it, if you have an iPhone. And it is available for free on the store. And again, I'll leave a link in the description. The spreadsheet I also developed, like I said, prior to the app, and I'll also leave a link in the description so you can download the spreadsheet. Just make sure you change your usable battery size in either those two options. So here's what I do, again, that's different. And I kind of discovered this on one of my trips when I was starting to worry about whether I was going to make it to my next charging stop. I go a little further, and I do this usually around the halfway point, or the point where I start to get concerned about how much I use going up that hill, and now what is it going to take for the rest of the trip? I'm kind of on the border at that point. I've used up a lot of energy to get up the hill to first half of my trip. So what I'll do is I'm always watching the car display to see the miles per kilowatt since the last charge, and you can see it on the screen what I'm talking about. And now I've calculated that I need at least 2.7 to reach my destination. But halfway into my trip, I'll check the car display and it'll show me how many more miles it is to the charging station. Or, if I'm using CarPlay with Apple Maps, it'll tell me how much further I need to go in order to reach my charging station destination. So what I do is I use the calculator app and I move that slider over to that number of miles. So if I have 50 miles left, that's what I'm going to move that slider to. And then I'm going to move the battery charge slider over to my current state of charge at that moment, halfway there, whatever it is, that's where my charge is currently. So maybe I have 20% left and I've got X number of miles to go. And then I'll move the efficiency slider back and forth until I find the sweet spot I'm happy with, maybe 5% remaining. And so then I know, maybe I have a new number now. Then I know that for the remainder of that trip, I can get by at 3.2 miles per kilowatt. That'll get me there. So what I'll do is I reset my trip B, which I did in the case in this screenshot I took, on my trip meter in my car. I'll reset that to 0 miles. And then it will be calculating my efficiency from that point to the point of my next charging stop. So that's what I will keep my eye on, is that trip B the rest of the way. And I'll make sure that I stay at least at that number, whatever it happens to be, say 3.0. I know for that remaining miles on trip B that I need to be at least the minimum to get me there. Another feature of my app is it'll also calculate the elevation difference between that point where I'm resetting my trip meter. It'll tell me the elevation from that point to the charging station, whether I'm going to be going up or down for the remainder of the trip. And that helps me understand, kind of what efficiency I'm going to expect for the rest of the trip. If I'm cutting it too close, and I'm not getting that 3.0, I'm down to 2.9, and I really need to be at 3.0 miles per kilowatt hour, then I'm going to slow down. And I'll slow down enough to where I can get that number back down on that trip B, on that kilowatts per hour. If in a worst case, I can always get behind a great big semi, big truck, and draft it, tailgate it. And that will save a lot of energy, especially if it's windy out and the wind, you're hitting a headwind. It's a great way to improve your efficiency is to get behind a big truck and just draft it. And you'll get better efficiency doing that. So you can control your efficiency with an EV, and that's how the two major ways you control it is speed, and then if you have a windy situation or you want to reduce that headwind that you're in, getting behind a truck really helps. So I can say rarely do I ever get into situations that cause me travel stress anymore. I've managed to figure out how to avoid that. The one time that I put the graphic up at the beginning about running it down to 0, I did that intentionally. And I did it because I was on my way back from a trip, and I knew I was cutting it close. I hit that trip meter with about 40, 50 miles left. And I think you can see it on the display, because this is the display of when I hit 0. And you can see the amount of miles I traveled when I got back home. And you can see the efficiency that I had on that last leg of the trip. And I knew if I kept it on that efficiency line that I determined 50 miles back or whatever it is, that I would be able to make it home. And I made it home with exactly 0, which I adjusted my speed a little faster in order to use up more energy. I wanted to get it down to 0 because I wanted to see what happens. I don't recommend you do that, but that's me. Some cars definitely have better onboard systems than others. Tesla, I've heard from Tesla owners that say that their system is great. And if that works for you, go for it, use it. For me, I don't trust my car. It's not that I don't trust my car, I just like to verify. I want to understand, what I think is going to happen and what the car thinks is going to happen, and then try to figure out whether I'm right or wrong. And remember, you don't need the calculator app to do the same thing I do. You just need the spreadsheet. So I hope it helps you. And I hope you found this video was helpful. And we'll press thumbs up if you did. I also have videos coming up on future road trips. And I hope you'll subscribe to my channel and join me on some of my adventures. I do truly hope that you're having as much fun as I am. I am loving life in 77, in my 70s. And that's what my channel is all about. I like to share the fun I'm having, the experiences I'm having, and I hope you'll join me on future trips and future videos. And I want to thank you so much for watching. Thank you.